Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever your time zone. Welcome. This is Digital Transformation Talk. I am your host, Kevin Craine. And listen, I am coming to you from downtown Portland, Oregon at the Marriott Hotel because here in the Pacific Northwest and indeed across the United States, we have been slammed with a historic deep freeze. Portland here is under about a quarter of an inch of ice, and many of us are without power. And that's why I'm here today, at the beautiful downtown Marriott to bring you this show. I want to thank the folks, the team at Business Reporter, who have been working so hard behind the scenes to get us here to this moment. And I want to thank Jeff White for standing in with for me yesterday for the episode yesterday. Thank you, everyone, for your hard work. We are going to soldier on today. We are here today with the second in a series of three special episodes where we will be featuring a focus on events happening at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. In just a minute, we'll take a look at a short clip from Davos. I'll give you a sneak peek at what's happening as we speak at the World Economic Forum. And then after that, we'll take a look at an interview I did last week in beautiful, sunny Southern California, in Irvine, California, at the offices of Ingram Micro. I had a great panel of guests, including Sanjib Sahoo from Ingram Micro, Hans Mize from Data41, and Wang from Constellation Research. We discussed the critical need of aligning tech goals and business goals for digital transformation success. We'll get to that in just a moment, but I'm pleased to say that I do have Wang with us today, live from Switzerland. Ray, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm with you. How are you? What's going
Hello,
on?
Ray. All right. Great to see you again. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, look, when we were talking just briefly before the show, you were mentioning that you felt that this World Economic Forum was sort of an unusual one. You had mentioned that many of what's really happening is sort of happening outside of the sessions. Tell us a little bit more. What is your impression from Davos, and how have things been going?
Well, first of all, the people here speak and they say it's Davos. And so I've been trying to say Davos. If you sound funny, that's what's going on here. But
Okay.
the interesting part here is normally you hear global politics, world leaders come and talk. You talk about economics and all these critical issues. But AI has subsumed every conversation. Now, if you want to get off campus, there's a conversation around Davos and a whole bunch of other programming, and that's where the crypto, the blockchain, they've got digital transformation, health and wellness. They're talking a lot about environment, sustainability. We're also talking about other topics, around AI as well, that of course happening. But it's interesting. The action is all around Davos as opposed to inside the Congress Center.
Now, you had mentioned that there is, of course, a lot of discussion about AI and its impact to businesses all across the board. We have a clip that will be talking a little bit about the impact to manufacturing, but of course, across the board in all industries. One of the big factors that people were talking about was trust with AI. Of course, tell us more.
Kevin, you're exactly right. This conversation around trust is really important. We're thinking about what's happening between the interaction between humans and machines. And in many cases, they're really asking for questions about how we actually engage. And the real big question is really about augmentation. How do we work closely with machines? How do we get people to trust those machines along the way? And how do we get people to, take the fear out of the fact that these machines might be replacing their jobs? And let's put it into some context. There's a lot of stuff that we do as humans that machines still won't be able to do. It's that human judgment that becomes important. And it'll take some time before machines are able to learn that human judgment. But we also have to trust that, because if we don't trust the machines, we won't be able to work side by side with AI or with machines or with robotics. And that's really a lot of learning. But there's also conversations about societal issues. Like, for example, is the data that's being provided in these large language models, has it been cleansed? Have we looked at it for bias? Is it, important information that might not be there? Do we augment that to a higher level degree, so that we get the right answers? And many times, that's not thought through. And people are talking about responsibility. They're talking about ethics. They're thinking about industry consortiums to be able to work with each other to share that information. And right now there's a standard in every country. There's a standard at every company. And there's no sense of common, core values as to what you would do to actually pull them together. So maybe at the country level, we'll see some aggregation. At the industry level, they're just beginning those conversations.
Interesting. So it sounds like really it's a cultural transformation that still somewhat needs to happen for us to really get over to reach the beach in terms of adoption of AI and its real impact to innovation. What are folks saying about that, the cultural implications and the cultural transformation that is needed?
So the cultural piece, I think we'll figure out. I believe that the challenge is in some industries, for example, in financial services, these organizations are not allowed to get together and establish standards because they're fearful, because they've all been sued by the large energy companies for coming up with sustainability standards, and they've actually sued them for collusion. Right. So now you see this interesting regulatory, environment where people are like, we should really be getting together to set standards because these are important. And then they had just had this issue where ESG and sustainability got them sued. So we're going to have to see how this plays out on the AI side. And some people are treating it with caution. And then leaders, of course, are proactively setting rules in case other things happen. And they're doing scenario planning against it.
Interesting that you mentioned financial services and finance. That is the topic of our show tomorrow. We will have a panel of guests talking about digital transformation in banking and financial services. So everyone stay tuned for that show tomorrow. Today, though, I'd like to bring our attention to a very short clip that is coming from the World Economic Forum. It was a panel discussion talking about empowering humans and machines in industry. Really the confluence of AI, robotics, and people, which is something that we talked about last week that we'll see here in a moment. But if we could, I'd like to just bring our attention to that clip from Davos. Now, if we could play that clip now, let's take a look.
So we all know that AI and other fourth industrial revolution technologies can improve production targets in manufacturing. That's clear. But they can also either empower the workers in those factories or they can disempower them.
That's very interesting. So empower the workers or disempower them. What do you think they're getting at with that disempowerment?
Yeah, there could be a resistance where people feel like the machines are taking my jobs. I don't want to help train those machines to get to that point. And especially in manufacturing, like you look at Tesla, they've got, the ability to actually run their, Optimus robots in places that humans probably could do. So their Optimus robot is like balancing things, ironing things. It's got fine motor skills, and that's there. But it also happens is, when you're thinking about software and technology, and you're thinking about what's going on in the high tech world, right? I mean, how does code get written? Right. I was watching my son write code the other day, and he's sitting in like GitHub, GitHub GPT Copilot, and basically he's testing code. Right. Now, for me, as someone who has hand codes, right, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. But can I trust the code on the back end? Well, the answer is yes. Right. If you play with it long enough, you get comfortable. It catches my mistakes. You're like, oh, that was a great idea. You check in the code. You're like, oh, this actually is helping. Right. You're also seeing it in companies that are dealing with commerce and transactions. Right. How do we actually automate transactions, digitize those, order to cash, digitize, campaign to lead? We did it with software, and at first we thought that was kind of strange. We went from paper to pencil to fax to entering an order ourselves, and now we're seeing machine-to-machine orders actually appear. So when you digitize environments, you can actually see that as well, and that's a sense of automation in working machines. In the future, we're actually going to do bidding processes like we do in stock trades when we hit this this condition. So when the price of a item hits this number, if my cash flow is at this level, and if the interest rates are at 2% or 4%, here's what we're going to do. We might buy something earlier. We might pay a vendor earlier, right? And that's where the AI kicks in, and you say, oh, that makes sense. A human will check it, they'll look at it, and they'll check off the box and say, that makes sense. And when you do it 100 times, okay, let's go automate it. I'm comfortable with this. And that's the cultural transformation that you're going to see, not just in manufacturing, but in every industry.
It reminds me of the time of the Industrial Revolution, when we saw a great deal of transformation, both in technology and in business and in the workforce, the way people work. Many are calling this era the digital industrial revolution. Do you believe that that is so? And what will it be required for us to really realize the full potential of this digital golden age, if you will?
Yeah, it's a great point. The World Economic Forum loves to talk about the fourth industrial revolution, and they kind of jumped the gun earlier. It really didn't hit until we got to AI at this level. And so we are definitely seeing digital transformation and AI come together. The tools to digitize the physical world are now being controlled by software and automation through AI. And this is the beginning. We are at the dawn now of the fourth industrial revolution because we've got AI to a point where there's public understanding and acceptance. And now what we're trying to do is take advantage of that and put that into almost everything we do, and hopefully come up with the right level of responsibility, trust, and of course, the ethics that go behind it. And they'll change. Each country, each industry, each locality will have their own set of what they're comfortable with.
What are folks saying about ethics?
Well, I think people are really trying to get a grasp as to what the standards are. On one hand, people want standards. On the other hand, they don't want too much regulation. And I think we're going to find that happy medium in the next 12 months. We typically have level 1 ethics where we put into place around AI. We think about having systems that are transparent. So at least let us be able to look into it. We don't want a black box. We want to be able to get to some level of explainability so we can test it. And then there's going to be a point where we can't even as humans understand the algorithms that's are going on, but we actually have to figure out if we have bias, how do we actually solve that problem? We make decisions with bias, but we have to understand how we handle unwanted bias. So if I'm discriminating against people with purple hair and they're left-handed, and I didn't mean to do that, how do I reverse that? Can I change that? Can I make that change and unlearn that in the systems? And then, of course, there's training. We've got to get to higher levels of precision. And then we have to decide, do we have a human in the process? And if we don't have a human in the process, what are the safeguards?
Well, these are all topics that we covered just last week in Irvine, California, at the offices of Ingram Micro, with a great panel of guests. We covered many of these in more depth. And so at this point, I think, Ray, I'd like to go ahead and bring up that pre-recorded interview. We discussed the need to properly align tech goals and business goals for business and digital transformation success. We covered many of these topics during that discussion. So let's go ahead now, if you don't mind. Let's bring that pre-recorded interview up and let's take a look at that.
I am here today at the headquarters of Ingram Micro in Irvine, California, with a great panel of guests. Starting with Ray Wang. Ray is the founder and principal analyst at Constellation Research, a research firm that studies transformative business and technology trends. Also with us is Hans Mize. Hans is the president of Data41. Data41 develops business analytics solutions for better decision making. And also with us today is Sanjib Sahoo, Executive Vice President and Chief Digital Officer at Ingram Micro. Sanjib is recognized as one of today's most influential business minds. So gentlemen, thank you for joining me today and spending some time with me. We're here today to talk about the critical importance of aligning tech goals and business goals for digital transformation success. Sanjib, I'd like to start with you if we could. Why do organizations seem to struggle to find success with digital transformation?
Digital transformation is an overused term, but one of the reasons it doesn't work is many times we think digital transformation is mostly about technology. It is not about technology only. The number one thing it fails is because of mindset. Organizations focus too much on perfection, trying to be perfect, trying to focus on the art of impossible versus the art of possible. We too much focus on that 40% chance of failure versus the 60% chance to succeed, right? The second point is, apart from the mindset, is the value focus. We always think we should build technology, build platform, and try to fit to a old business model. There is a discrete difference between trying to build platforms and then adopt in the business. It does not work, because you need to have a continuous loop of creating and capturing value and bring that aspect into your transformation, not wait for it. You cannot wait for building technology and then trying to adopt technology, because the markets change all the time.
Now, Ray, the failure rate of digital transformation is quite high, sometimes 70, 80%, even more. Does this correlate with your research as well?
Yeah, we're definitely saying that. It's about 77% of most companies will fail in digital transformation. And for a lot of the reasons that Sanjib was talking about, the important piece here is you've got to have a great partner. They've got to bring their A game. You have to have great technology vendors. They have to bring their A game. And your team also has to be competent to be able to do that. Most failure comes down to culture, people, and of course, not having a good business objective. But there's another piece that's important to think about. Depending on what type of project you're going after. Sometimes the transformation is going after costs, sometimes it's operational efficiency, sometimes it's regulatory compliance, sometimes it's a brand new business model or revenue and growth, or even a brand transformation, and those increase in level of complexity and of course, level of risk. Project type is a very important piece. We look at return on transformation impact, and this measure of RTI is very, very hard to succeed because you also have to build teams that handle incremental innovation versus transformational innovation, and those are two different animals.
Now, Hans, organizations today, many if not all, have a vast amount of technology with which they can work. They have skilled people that are running that technological infrastructure, a great deal of data information from which to use, but many still struggle to find success with digital transformation. What can technologists and data analysts do differently to ensure that their efforts are really moving the needle in terms of organizational performance?
Digital transformation will be with us. Change will be with us whether we want it or not. It's just a requirement of running a business today. And we have to stop getting caught up in the minutia of what's the best tool for my company. We need to look at our company to understand what is the best outcome I'm trying to achieve, and then back into what is the best solution that's going to help me achieve that with the staff that I have, with the best partner, and have very outcome-based milestones in terms of where you want to go with this constant called digital transformation. And then from there, hit a landing spot, reassess, and then go further.
Sanjib, from an executive point of view, can you give us some advice on what KPIs, key performance indicators, and measures we should be using in our digital transformation plans and how that can lend a shared goal approach to our efforts?
In my mind, more than digital transformation, we should figure out how to do digital operations. We should have the DNA in an organization to learn operating digitally because technology will keep coming and going and changing. The idea is to take that technology and operationally use it to improve customer experience or improve your cost structure, etc. The first is, before you define this, bring everybody together. It's not technology, bring the organization together. So use design thinking, having evangelizing. When you are tired of talking about your strategy, then people get it. Second is you need to have a plan, a focused plan where you actually define the success criteria which will be measured for success. You need that. And that is generally about a value. It can be revenue, operating income, margin expansion, some value that is truly baked in the plan. The third is then comes the true technology in the architecture because organizations have opportunity gap and performance gap, right? Performance gaps are easier to fix. What is important is organizations, they can pivot different business models to take care of opportunity. Like Ray once mentioned, more than 50% of the Fortune 500 companies have disappeared from the list in the last 20 years. So we have to be prepared for that opportunity gap, prepare for market disruption, do that. The last part is governance. Figure out the metrics, whatever the metrics or organization, and then measure it with the data, make sure that it works and in smaller cycles. And if it doesn't work, pivot, fail fast, and measure so that you know what is working. And if you do not have that continuous loop of creating technology and measuring value, it will not work. If you wait few years to build the technology, then somebody should adopt it, that doesn't work. That's the discipline we need. If you build technology and deploy technology, we call DevOps or TechOps, or
Right.
we have created DGOps. How do you operationalize digital platforms to create and the value? That's what we do.
So it's not about the technology, it's about the results in terms of performance of the organization. Now, Ray, it seems to me that when it comes to setting shared goals for digital transformation, one approach that can be fruitful for organizations is using a process-oriented approach. In other words, what processes should be targeted for transformation? What are the gaps in the performance of that process? And how should digital transformation techniques be applied to overcome those gaps? What is your advice for organizations that are looking to do just that, use a process-oriented approach to digital transformation?
Yeah, I actually think it's important to align that process to a business model that is going to be successful. What we're really trying to get to is what we call return on transformation impact, right? That's cost, that's benefit, that's probability of success, and that's the project type. And when you look at each of those, you build a portfolio of what's important. So, for example, every CEO that's coming in and every CXO, CDO, CTO, CIO that's actually in the space knows that I got to get cost savings up front so that I can pay for innovation on the other end, so that I can deliver a business value or a business metric that's going to be successful. In which process? Is that lead to cash? Is that order to cash? Is it going to be quote to cash? Like, how far do you want to go back in the process? Maybe it's hire to retire. Maybe changing your HR processes. Maybe you're doing something on the finance operations and supply chain, concept to commercialization. Each one of those processes then go back and you figure out what are the analytics that are going to be important. If you don't have the analytics in place and you can't quantify what you're going to be able to do, then you have nowhere to begin with. And you're going to build a portfolio of what projects that you're going to tackle and in which order you're going to tackle, because order of operations is also going to be important, because the dependencies between cross processes are actually much more important than the dependencies across departments. And you start seeing that you're going to break down functional fiefdoms, and those functional fiefdoms and departments are going to be actually collapsed into processes. And as you start simplifying the processes, you start to find the savings, the opportunities, and more importantly, an opportunity to automation.
Hans Mize is talking about the importance of having analytics in place. From a technological point of view, what are some of the measures and analytics on the technology side that we can use to substantiate our efforts to demonstrate our success and measure that against corporate performance? What are some of those analytics, and where does the data come from to support those?
What's interesting is, we're going through this, and there's a lot of hype, especially around AI today. There's been a lot of hype around cloud. There's been a lot of hype around, back in the day, client server architecture as an example. And people think companies make changes, they bring in solutions for the sake of bringing in solutions. Typically, the question you have to ask is, what problem am I trying to solve? Who does it impact? How do I, increase value? Because value actually enhances experience. And from there, how do we transform our business to be able to bring in automation, bring in solutions in order to move that value to enhance the experience? And if you were to look at, going back on that time continuum, decades ago, we were in what I would call a data scarcity. We were putting in ERP systems to basically automate basic transactions. And those basic transactions brought in certain amounts of data, certain types of data that were basically done on paper before. A bit of a transformation process to go there. Now, with the proliferation of the internet, mobile devices, cloud, you name it, we have an overabundance of data. So going back to the analytics, you need to have an understanding of what data you need. You need to have an understanding of where it's coming from. You need to have an understanding of what outcome I'm trying to accomplish. You need to have an understanding of what problem I'm trying to solve. And the most important aspect of all of this in an organization is you've got to have an executive visionary, and they have to be involved through the entire process.
Well, that brings us to our next discussion point, and that is keeping our digital transformation efforts on track. I think this is an important point, because when we think of digital transformation, we often think of the technologies involved, the data involved, but the truth is that people are where innovation happens. And so it's important that we align our people with our technology and our business goals. And so, Sanjib, I'm wondering if you can give us some steps to take that executives can adopt that can help provide that sort of alignment, keep us on track in terms of our technology, our people, our process, and our performance.
When we are transforming, an executive vision or communication is extremely important. We have to figure out that should be the DNA of the organization. It should be continuous. Technology is changing 10 years ago, 20 years ago. How do we take this evolving technology, process, experience to constantly create value for your current business, be disruption proof, and then keep on figuring it out how you can move ahead in the organization? That is the culture shift. And perfection is the biggest enemy for progress and transformation and innovation. You can build the best technology in the world. It's pointless if it does not create that value.
Ray, what are some of the results that are possible with organizations that do this right? We keep our efforts on track. We keep them focused on our business outcomes. We have a set of shared goals and objectives across the organization. What are some of the results for organizations that get this right?
First one we're talking about is a concept called decision velocity. You and I make a split-second decision. That's great. But how long does it take to get past management? Right? Could be a month, could be a quarter, could be a year. Some decisions take a long time. But the challenge as we go forward is we're actually competing on machine scale, and machines make decisions in thousandths of a second. They can do tens of thousands of decisions in a second. And what that means is how do we actually improve that velocity inside the organization? Because that's what we're going to be competing on. You'll actually achieve what we call decision velocity by able to make faster decisions, more precise decisions, and be able to actually be much more nimble and agile. The second one is you're going to change your mix in digital monetization. We're moving from products to services, services to experiences, experiences to outcomes. That's not an easy journey. And so when we start thinking about what digital monetization models have, well, it's ads, search, goods, services, memberships, and subscriptions. Bringing all that together is a very difficult task. You take a large company, a large internet company that's able to do that, you start to see the synergies that are happening. So companies that are in that space are able to provide advertising dollars, able to deliver on service revenue they wouldn't have seen before. More importantly, they can actually take products and goods and actually continue to build a revenue stream against that. And then the last thing that's a little bit different is really back to what Sanjib was talking about, which is the hard part. It's changing the ethos of an organization. You're moving from thinking about serving a customer to being able to serve at marketplaces. You're moving from serving the ability to actually deliver on quality, but then deliver on a movement and an outcome. And we're actually seeing that happen in companies that are leading the charge. They're pulling industries ahead, and they're also collapsing industries. And so what we're starting to see are marketplaces being led by leaders, like, for example, take Ingram here. They're building marketplaces that are collapsing industry value chains. And those industry value chains of what you traditionally would see in different parts of the ecosystem of technology are suddenly being pulled up into new sets of marketplaces and leading new types of movements in terms of what the expectations are for delivery, expectations are for quality of service, expectations in terms of price and dynamic pricing capabilities, and more importantly, what the level of commitment and services do you want to pay for? Those opportunities are now available everywhere.
That is the transformation part of the digital transformation. Now, Hans, there is a great deal of opportunity we want to maximize with digital transformation, but there is also a great deal of risk that can present itself. Nowhere is that risk found more prominently than in areas of data management and data security. What is your suggestion for organizations mapping out their digital transformation roadmap? How can they minimize their risk when it comes to data management and data security?
Yeah, the entire concept of, what data do I have available to me? What data do I need? And what data do I need to manage? You need to have a strong governance policy, just across the board for the entire organization. And then looking at it, based on that need, I alluded to the fact that we went from data scarcity to data overabundance. And right now, I think that is probably the biggest hurdle that any organization is trying to overcome right now. And then the question is, Ray had talked about decision velocity, which is a really interesting concept because we're trying to come up with a data aggregation type of strategy that includes data consolidation for the different areas of the business that need it, data governance to ensure that the data that is being propagated out to the certain individuals, they actually have the security rights to see, and that nobody else can see that, human resource data being, probably top of the list. And then we're trying to keep the bad actors out of our internal network and out of a cloud infrastructure so that we only work with, the data that we're supposed to work with, with all this data abundance. But going back to the decision velocity, companies that do it well can increase velocity and decrease that decision time frame to make better decisions faster. Companies that don't have a good data strategy and good consolidation are making bad decisions faster. Now think about that for a minute. They've got the same technology, you got the people component, you've got the information in front of you, but if it isn't the correct information, you don't have the governance in place, you are actually putting your business at risk.
Now, Ray, when we're talking about maximizing our opportunity with digital transformation, here we are in January of 2024. We're all looking forward to the coming year and indeed the coming horizon. What are some future-looking applications that you feel are particularly compelling, that we perhaps may be overlooking? And what should organizations do about it?
Well, actually, I want to go back to Hans's point. I think every organization in a digital world is evolving to be what we call a data inc company.
And the valuation of a company is really going to be what their data is actually giving them. So today we value your transactions, we value your revenue, but in the future it's really the insights that's coming from that that's really going to make or break companies. And so as part of what we're seeing in that future is really analytics, automation, and AI are probably the three things that are coming together very rapidly. The analytics is providing the insights to answering the business questions. The automation is creating the velocity that's required, that's going to be needed. But more importantly, the AI is actually starting to build that knowledge base that separates companies from winners and losers. Simple example, Callaway recently bought Topgolf, right? And you sit there and like, why would Callaway buy Topgolf? And you say, that's kind of interesting. If you've been to Topgolf, it's basically a bowling alley for golfers, right? They track it, you swing the golf club, get all the metrics, you get all the data, and that's in there. And you sit there like, that's kind of interesting. The press release says, revenue per square feet, cross-sell. It's going to be an interesting sell. We get to younger demographics. But the reality is something even different. They're building the way to get to unique sets of data that nobody else can get to. What can they do better than anyone else? Well, they have 10 times, actually no, 10,000 times better data on crappy golf swings. Now, what can you do with crappy golf swing data? Well, you can test the ball better, you can test the club better, you can build better clubs, better golf balls for your average day golfer. That's a unique data set that they're able to derive. Let's take Tesla, another very interesting example. They've got what we call derivative data sets. They can deliver insurance based on driving data cheaper than insurance companies using the same underwriting. They take the underwriters, give them their underwriting model using Tesla data, and your insurance is cut in half. So we're going to see a lot of models like this going in the forward, really built on data and data inc companies, and that's where we see the future.
Before I let you go, one last question. Hans, you're a customer of Ingram Micro. How is Ingram Micro's approach to digital transformation and their adoption of AI affected your work?
So Sanjib brought up the term frictionless environment. Being on the receiving end of Xvantage, being on the receiving end of being an Ingram client, we require a certain data set in order to run our business, to understand our relationship with Ingram so that we can actually use that information and the insights to better service our clients. And what's interesting in what Sanjib is doing with the technology where it sits today and the futures with the technology, there's a big difference between the data that we request and the actual data we need. And a lot of times what we request is not necessarily the data that we need. And that single piece of glass is giving us what we want, but also what we need. And those additional insights and examples of that would be, if I know what my historical performance is based on what we sold to our clients last year, how can I drill into that to better understand when the transaction took place, what promotions were taking place, were there any co-marketing dollars associated with that? Furthermore, we can look at our solution set, we can look at new markets, and they can provide data in that single piece of glass. And have you considered looking at this market, this geography, this industry based on what you have, because the propensity to buy your products and services are far greater if you were to make an investment in this particular market. That's data we need that we didn't request. That's very powerful.
Good data equals good decisions.
Mm-hmm. Faster.
Now, Ray, this isn't the first time that you've seen an industry digitally transform. What are your thoughts about Ingram Micro's efforts with digital transformation and the efforts of other organizations making such a transition?
Well, first of all, I'd have to say digital transformation is not easy, right? It's business transformation, cultural transformation, and the ability to actually create new models. What's happening at Ingram Micro, and really it's a change, right? It's having the right talent in place. It's putting your vendors up to be able to deliver their best capabilities, and it's having your technology partners also deliver their best capabilities, and of course, having your internal teams putting that together. That doesn't happen in a lot of digital transformation efforts. You either have a good change team inside your organization, you might have a good technology partner, you might have a good implementation partner, but you don't bring all three together very easily. And it's not an easy thing to do. It requires the human touch. And so what we're witnessing here is really a transformation of an industry in the past that's been very, very analog to something that's going to be very, very digital, to something that's going to be what we call a data inc company in the future, because the information, the insights are there. This is not easy. This is the exception, not the rule. And there's a lot to be learned here in terms of getting to a model where you can template to a point where you're going to be able to deliver very quickly to a point where everyone in the ecosystem has the ability to actually pull together. And that's why I'm saying they're creating markets. They're activating a movement around markets, which is not your normal digital transformation project.
All right, Sanjib, what should business executives, technologists, all of us really, be thinking about today and strategizing for today in order to be prepared for the world in 5 years' time?
I will summarize first and then give you more clarity. The art to be successful digital transformation agent is be aggressively digital but amazingly human. Aggressively digital and amazingly human. Why do I say that? Amazingly human means, you are evangelizing your vision, you are challenging your mindset. Keep challenging your limits, but don't limit your challenges. You keep pushing for the art of possible. You keep pushing that focus on that 40% chance of failure is not as important as a 60% chance of success. That's a complete mindset change. Our mindset will drive our skill set because AI, cloud, Gen AI, technology will keep on changing. But our mindset will actually drive how we adopt technology, which is the fundamental pillar which has opened up not only the possibilities, but the connective value chains. The business models are getting blurred. You're having connective value chains. And as we said, a frictionless, being able to create the frictionless value to our customers. That's very important. What we need to also think about aggressively digital is there isn't a stop sign to transformation. There is infinite possibilities, but we have to start approaching transformation with a transformative spirit and mindset. We don't hire digital transformers. We don't hire innovators. You actually need a transformative spirit. That's very, very key. That spirit will make you decide how you look at customers differently, models differently, solve problems differently. How do you actually focus on outcome? How you don't, how you are not stopping at status quo and constantly looking for improving, continuous improvement, and able to deal with imperfection. Imperfection is okay, but keep moving, and then match it to technology, process, and people to constantly create value. The last thing I will say is adoption of digital technology and platform is not an option. The moment you have adoption as an option, it will not work. So start with the value, start with the customer and reverse engineer. Figure out the problems, use technology to solve your problems, but always stand up for value. Everybody should be a CVO, a Chief Value Officer. That's the best lens to have any transformation. It will not stop. It might fail in smaller cycles, but you have to have the spirit of moving fast and challenging yourself and driving value.
What a great conversation. I have been here at the headquarters of Ingram Micro in Irvine, California, with a great panel of guests. Hans Mize from Data41, Ray Wang from Constellation Research, and Sanjib Sahoo, Executive Vice President from Ingram Micro. Gentlemen, thank you for spending some time with me today. I hope we get a chance to talk again soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.